Hi everyone, my name is Lillian Walker Shelton and I am an author originally from Philadelphia, but now I live in the DC metro area. I've been writing, this is my actual first real project. The other projects that I've done have been maybe like affiliated with school or something like that, but this is the first major independent project that I have done. So many different things really influenced me to be a writer. The first thing really would be my uncle and my mentor, Charles Fuller, who is a Pulitzer Prize winning author. Growing up my whole life, I knew about his plays, I knew about his movies that he did screenplays for, I knew about all of his writings, and so that was really influential to me when I first thought about writing. But then for the particular project that I did now, I wanted to do something that would be a multicultural book written by an African American woman about different women's perspectives. I thought that it would be important to do something like this because a lot of times you may have books by African American women, but they're just about African American women characters. But this book has multiracial characters in it. So the title of the book is Amelia Song, and the book is about 4 different women who go on a delegation to Guatemala, and once they go there, the science fiction kind of part of the book happens where they're part of a magical spell. Now, I don't want to ruin it for everybody because it's really it's a lot of mysteries to the book and a lot of things like, oh, I didn't see that coming, so I don't want to give away the whole book. But that's the storyline of it. You have a character that is European American. Her name is Sarah. Even though I said European American, but even though she's white, her husband is black, and she works at a law firm. You have another character named Felicity. She's black, and she lives in the poorest part of Southeast DC, and she's a child care worker. And then you have another character named Gloria, who is actually Guatemalan, and she works down on a banana plantation in Guatemala. The fourth and supporting character is named May, and May is Thai. And the interesting thing about the character May is that May is actually transgender. And I decided to have a transgender character in my book because of how transgendered women are now coming more into the women's movement. And I thought that it would be important to also have exposure to their lives and some of the things that they deal with. So I'm really glad you asked that. Part 1 of the book is called Women's Ballads. You get background on each one of the 4 main characters. You get to see what their independent struggles are and what they're going through. Part 2 of the book, which is called Indigenous Incantations, when they're down in Guatemala, you see all of the characters meet. Part 3 of the book, Musical Chairs, is back to the women's individual lives, but they do overlap some because they're helping each other at this point. And then part 4 of the book, Eternal Melody, the end part, you also get to see what happens to them at the end of the story after they finish helping each other. I wanted to do it because I think that, she has a story to tell. I had an opportunity to work with an organization that represents transgender people who have issues in the workplace in DC, and it's like the DC Trans Union, and they were trying to help trans people who were having just workplace issues. And from getting to know those people, I got to know more about their story and about their struggle, and what brought them to the place where they said, I feel like that I have maybe been assigned the wrong gender and I want to correct that. And I think that just considering that, considering the media frenzy around Caitlyn Jenner, considering what happened with gay marriage, I think that we're moving into a time where we have to redefine some things, some categories that we all thought that we had set up in our mind before. And one of those categories is what gender is and what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman. Absolutely, I think so. It's a different time. It's a changing time. It's funny when I talk to my grandmother, who is 96 years old, speaking about Obama when he first became president 8 years ago. She said to me, "I never thought I would live to see the day where we had a African American president, a black president of the United States of America, considering the strong history that we've had of racism and injustice." So that really played in mind to it. But then, like you said, going back to like the relationship aspect of, okay, you have people who are in interracial relationships, and what does that really mean? And for the woman who's in my book, Sarah, she's white, her husband is black, but then also she has a white collar job and he has a blue collar job. So looking at that, and what does that mean too? But then also, like, you may have the two people who are in the core part of the relationship, the man and the woman, but then what do their family members feel about the relationship? And that's explored a little bit in my book also. How do they really feel that their family is with somebody who is of a different race? I think for me, with like writing at home, like my husband, he just was always just so proud of me. He knew about my uncle being a writer, and he was like, okay, and he would see me at night sometimes just turn off the TV and just be writing. He's like, "Oh, you're just writing your book. That's wonderful." He's really supportive of it. But for some of the technical things about the book, the mechanical things about the book, what I did, I went to my friends who are writers. Like, I have a good friend named Callie Shanafelt. She's a journalist, and I went to her and I said, "Okay, I'm trying to give these people's voice. How do I do that?" And she told me how to do it and how to think about it when I was writing. And then also too, because part of the book takes place in Guatemala, so I went to like my friends who are Guatemalan, and then also I had been to Guatemala myself. So I had research, like, and acknowledgments of the book. I try to like thank people who really helped me be able to put it all together and who really supported me completely through the project. Well, in 2008, I had an opportunity to go to Guatemala with a women's group that is no longer in existence. But we went there to do kind of like a worker exchange where we were women who were workers in the United States, and we got to see what women who were workers in Guatemala were doing. And so we had someone who worked at a job training facility, someone who was a union organizer. We had two students. We had me, and I'm trying to think of who else we had. I can't think of the other person right now at the moment. But when we went down there, we had an opportunity to go and do things like go to a textile factory and see how women make clothes there, but they're paid very poorly. We had an opportunity to go to a banana plantation and see how they pick bananas and they're packaged and they're sent to the United States. And the interesting thing about that I tell people, and I just think it's so funny, you have all these movies like I Am Legend and Terminator about the end of the world and how there's like no people left on the planet and everything like that. And I think whoever wrote these movies, they have never been to a banana plantation in Guatemala, because the way that it is, you go and the whole place is behind a giant wall. So you're like, what's going on behind the wall? And you go in through this gate, and behind the wall is basically a whole city of people. When we went, I mean, people were coming out of everywhere, and I'm like, wow, there's so many folks. This is just amazing. You would never think all of this exists behind the wall on the banana plantation, but that's there. So going there, that was just such an experience for me. And that's when I learned too about being relational with people, because I don't speak any Spanish at all, but because I would smile and look friendly, people would always come up and talk to me, and they would say things to me, and then I would look at my friend like, what did they say? And she would tell me. So going on that trip was like a big turning point in my life, because I saw the biggest thing I came away with was, in the United States we have poverty and we struggle, but when you talk about the poverty in other countries and how the workers are paid there, it is nothing compared to what we deal with in our country. They may get paid $7 a day, they may get paid $25 every 2 weeks, and because of the fact that they don't have the labor laws that we have here. So that really struck such a strong chord with me when I came away from there. Well, I mean, it's just, and that's such a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because with my friends who are in the women's movement, who are feminists, we always talk about how the European American women, the white women's movement is totally separate from our women's movement, because there are studies that have been done that say still in 2015, women get paid less than men, but white women still get paid more than black women. I mean, and that's just a natural fact. It's something different. And then also in terms of, like you were saying about the standard of career, you look at the career choices and the options that have been afforded to them compared to the career choices and the options that have been afforded to us. It's also something totally different. In that category, black men have more of an advantage than black women. And just kind of bringing it home, and even looking at, like, with the book, with Amelia Song, the African American woman in the book, Felicity, she works as a child care worker, and most of her money that she gets, she has to share it with her family, because her mother doesn't work, and her brother doesn't really work, and so she's taking just the child care worker salary and supporting them. So it is a whole different standard of what it means, and I think it really is addressed in the book, and you get to see it. But I don't know what it's going to take. I think that it's interesting when they said, and I forget her name, but I know her last name is Arquette. She gave a speech earlier this year at one of these award ceremonies about women and women fighting for rights, and a lot of African American women answered, well, she didn't really address our issues too. So I think we have had two separate movements. Now, where I can say it has overlapped a lot is the movement that's closest to me, and that's the labor movement. That what happened in the labor movement is that a lot of times when you had the rights that were given to maybe white women, they were the same white rights that were given to black women too. And that's why you see a lot of black women try to get jobs that are union jobs, maybe working in public service like a bus operator, or even telephone operator, or other things. And these are good jobs that you can turn into a career and make a living wage off of. But there's still so many other areas of women's inequality, and it's still so much more to even push for. Just even considering how we're respected and how we're treated in the public. So the book itself is only available on Amazon Kindle. These days, to get a book printed, it takes a lot of money. So a lot of new authors are going the electronic route, where you just have it available on the internet. But the cool thing about Kindle is that you can download the app and you can read it on any device. I mean, your phone, your tablet, and your computer. You can read the book that way. I mean, that's a heavy order. That's a really heavy and a tall order, to be able to say that I could do something that was achieved by my uncle, to be a Pulitzer Prize winning writer. Would I like to be a Pulitzer Prize winning writer? Absolutely. But I think what happened for me is that when, because I'm not a writer, by trade, my career is I'm a counselor. And right now, I'm a counselor education student. So, when people said, oh, you wrote a book? They know that I'm a counselor. They know that I work with low income people. They know, that I work with people who are severely mentally ill. They're like, I didn't think that you would write. So, what happened for me is that I would tell people, okay, I did write something, and I was mentored in my writing by my uncle, who was a Pulitzer Prize winning writer, who got nominated for an Academy Award. And even more importantly, where it came into my process is, once I was finished writing the whole thing, I gave him the book to read, because I wanted to know if this was something that made sense. Because you have something that you write or you produce as an artist, and you're like, this is great, but is it something that should be released into the public? And once I gave it to him and he looked at it, and he took his time editing it, he took his time giving me feedback, it was really great, and it helped me a lot, and it let me know, okay, this is something. And he also gave me recommendations for things to use about writing and expounding upon different areas in the book. So that's where he came in the process and everything. And I definitely I mentioned him in the acknowledgments of the book for his mentoring during the process. And what I was going to say too, I think that what what Charles Fuller provided for me too was honest, experienced feedback, because I think that a lot of people, they want to produce things and they don't understand that you need to get a critical eye to look it over to give you feedback. Like when giving it to him, he was able to say, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. I've read a lot of books by people who are hustling their book, and and I'm like, this is wonderful, this is great, but did you have somebody who was a professional editor look at your book? Did you have somebody who's a professional writer look at this? And if that's the case, then it's hard. My friend was telling me that she read a book by someone, they didn't have the book edited, so it was hard for her to read. So I think that the recommendations you get from people who have experience in the field really are beneficial to you. They're not trying to rain on your parade, but they're giving you really helpful criticism, because we all know that if you look at something and you've just been looking at it, you're not going to realize any of the mistakes that you may have made with it. Well, I think the thing about it is, like, you have to, number one, believe in yourself. Believe in the stories that you're telling for people. And, that will motivate you and encourage you so much more. The thing about it is, people have more people in their network than they absolutely realize. And a lot of my book, it's oddly enough that it's just on the internet. A lot of the help for my book came from the internet and came from like social media. So once Charles Fuller and another one of my friends, Damon Agnos, got back to me and said, "Hey, Lil, get yourself a professional copy editor to look at this book." And when I put them on social media, it was so crazy because people just answered the call. And so just from those things, then also you have to look at like the connections and the network that you have. I for years before I became a student, I worked as a social justice activist with DC Jobs with Justice, and so I did so much stuff in the labor movement. There's a labor element in my book. So when I came out with the book, I went to my friends in the labor movement. I said, "Hey, I've been helping you for a long time. Can you help me?" And they said, "Absolutely, we'll help you, Lily." So from that, I was able to do like a radio interview on the public radio station down there. I had an article written up about me in the labor like newsletter that they have come out every day. So I think what you have to do is just think about, okay, I want to write something. I want something to get out in the public. How can I really do it? Who do I know that can really help me? But the way you even go about asking is just to put the word out and just put it out there. Folks really answered the call once I put it out on social media. And I was surprised, like, yeah, that's how I got somebody to make my website. That's how I got someone to do a copy editing for me. And that's how I got some interviews. Well, they can go to my website. It's www.emiliasong.com, EMILIASSONG.com. And from there you can be directed to the Facebook page, to the Twitter page, to the Instagram page. And also you can reach out. There's Amelia Song on YouTube, which this video and interview will be on there. And so they can reach me that way. And they can send me an email at emiliasong2015@gmail.com. I want to say, thank you for this opportunity, but I think also too what you're trying to create here is really wonderful. There's a lot of people who are artists and they need a platform, and all they need is a chance to get exposed. And who knows, from maybe people maybe people I know, they'll get the exposure that they need to get it out there. But all it just takes is just motivation, and just taking that step and saying, okay, let me send you a message, let me contact you and say, I want to come and talk about my project too. So it can be done. But thank you for providing that platform for people who are trying.